please. Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 23rd, 10:43 a.m. And this is the second half of Senate Natural Resources and Energy. We're continuing work on S-248, an act relating to, 284, an act relating to weatherization. And I'm going to be speaking now with Mr. Poor of the Department of Public Service. So good morning, Mr. Poor. Thanks for coming over.
Good morning. And so today I prepared to talk about the governor's proposal for weatherization, in particular the $35 million for moderate income weatherization. And that's part of the $80 million package that the governor has proposed, with the other $45 million proposed to go to the Office of Economic Opportunity to expand and continue low-income weatherization programs.
Okay.
So I noticed as you all were on break that I'm the only one here for this session, that some of the that Commissioner Walk and somebody from the Department of Labor were originally scheduled. To the extent you want to talk about workforce issues, I really suggest bringing them in, them and OEO in. I am probably not the best person from the administration to talk about workforce, although I can talk to it a little bit.
Okay, well, sure. And Commissioner Walk got in touch. We've learned that it's vacation week for many families, and so never begrudge anyone having family vacation time. So we will schedule him in after, when he's back. Ms. Buxton, I'm not sure.
Senator Bray, she's not available either. I changed, if you check the agenda, it's been changed.
Okay, thank you. But we haven't really walked through the funding proposal, so that would be very helpful.
Great. So,
and good news, TJ, we have an hour and 15 minutes to do it. So
plenty of time. Well, unless you have a whole lot of questions, I don't know that we'll use up all of that time, but I'll talk really slowly. I felt like, over the last couple of years, I've been in this committee and you all have talked about weatherization quite a bit. So the need, it wasn't planning to go too deep into the need for weatherization funding or the benefits of weatherization for you all today. I think it was weatherization funding is a core near-term component of the comprehensive energy plan to fund weatherization using federal funds as much as there's capacity to do, while considering long-term solutions such as a carve-out in the clean heat standard. It's also a big part, as you know, of the climate action plan, and which also put a priority on weatherization. And last year, you'll recall, in Act 74 of 2021, the legislature appropriated $5 million to via the department, but to Efficiency Vermont for moderate income weatherization, low to moderate income weatherization. So this $35 million proposal would extend and enhance that $5 million portion of the ARPA funding. Also, last year, you did fund $2 million for under the general category of workforce development, with about half of that intended to go to NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, and then the other half to be delivered via Efficiency Vermont. And I can update you on the status of that $2 million in a minute. But the $5 million, I think, is important to let you know where it's at, because it will then extend with this $35 million. So Efficiency Vermont is planning on focusing on 3 general areas for the use of that $5 million. They're enhanced home performance with Energy Star incentives, and then additional low-income multifamily weatherization services. In addition, there'd be some additional support for mobile and manufactured homes weatherization support. For the first one, the enhanced incentives, they propose to go back to the levels that they had in 2020 of covering up to 75% of the project costs. Currently, they're at up to 50%, and then going up to $5,000, which compared to the current maximum of $3,000. And so a much higher level of support. I should note that the $35 million that would going to be on top of this is intended to be obligated by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026, consistent with ARPA guidelines. I think there was a proposal floating out there that had a spent by 2024 date in it. And so I just want to be clear, it's intended to be over 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
The low-income multifamily weatherization services would be to through Efficiency Vermont's partnership with 3E Thermal, which delivers multifamily housing weatherization for both OEO and Efficiency Vermont, but really to provide technical assistance and incentives to property owners and developers, with the idea that that then flows to the savings will flow to the renters. This is just an avenue to actually provide a real greater reach and provide services and resources to that community, to renters who really has been a tough nut to crack with weatherization and efficiency programs over time. And then finally, just the Office of Economic Opportunity serves mobile and manufactured homes, but I think I caught the tail end of Mr. Zabrisky's testimony, and I think there are measures that are not that don't screen in their process, and so some of this funding would of the $5 million would be going to the to support deeper and more comprehensive retrofits in that area. And so for the $35 million, we plan to expand and enhance all of those programs, and perhaps have additional ones as we're working out. Those programs were designed to spend the $5 million. Now we have potential for seven times that. I want to just for one moment, I'm going to share my screen here and show a slide just to give you a sense of what that means, current funding versus what we're proposing here. Okay, can folks see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so what we have here is just a table of, and I apologize for not getting it to you sooner. I sent this to Ms. Newman just this morning. What we have here is on a calendar year basis. That's how Efficiency Vermont is structured. In the second column there is the approximate revenue that they have for thermal and process fuel efficiency. And you can see there's roughly $7 million a year through next year, and then it drops off to $4 million. And that is due to reductions in revenues expected from the forward capacity market, because that market has been the market has cleared at lowered prices for new resources for those years. And so you can see a big drop off. The third column is the ARPA allocation of the $5 million that I was just talking about, and fourth column is the proposed additional ARPA money. And this is just an example, not dictating exactly how the spending would be fleshed out, but you could see it'd be expected to be a ramp up. And then you have the total funding increasing over time, and the total number of units per year increasing over time, so that in 2026 we're doing about twice as many as we were doing in 2021. Two things about this that I'll just point out is one, this funding fills that drop off in the expected revenue. I think that's important to have consistent, to not have a drop off when we've identified such a big need. And then it increases the total amount of funding consistent with the energy plan and the climate action plan. The other thing I just point out is that in 2026, that does create a program where we have $18 million in 2026, and then in 2027, we'd expect, without any further action, there would be a cliff. And so I think number one priority here is to ensure that we take advantage of this opportunity with ARPA money and get these funds appropriated and move forward. Number two priority would be to find that sustainable funding source going forward. But I think we need to be laser focused on making sure that the entire amount of this appropriation does go to this proposed appropriation does go to weatherization. I will stop there. I'll leave the slide up for just a moment in case you have questions on that. And otherwise, that's all I had prepared to talk about.
Okay. Well, so thanks for putting those numbers together. So I'm just looking 9.5 plus 100 is 20, 34. Okay. So there's the allocation of 35 in that 1, 2, 3, fourth column, basically, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And it's been our good fortune that those dollars in that fourth column, I think, are dollars that, well, actually, the third and fourth are dollars that in the last couple of years we've had to try to raise ourselves. Like that's why we had the pilot before, where we changed the rules to allow some electrical energy efficiency charge dollars to flow over and start piloting work in other areas, knowing that it wasn't enough. So we're lucky that we have it, but it's a serious thing for us to be looking ahead, not waiting till 2026 to replace it. I would hope that sooner than that, we'd start to find ways to build a bridge,
Yeah, and I think you've heard this many times in committee before, but one of the things we hear is that contractors and the folks who would actually be doing this work are a little hesitant to ramp up when there's a big funding cliff, and so it is tied to the workforce question that I know you all are going to tackle. That having some certainty that there will be programs to help support, it doesn't, whether it's needing another 14 million to keep it level or more than that or less than that, I think, or a different mechanism, I think it's all up for discussion.
Sure. Well, and hopefully the market will find, whatever. We'll have 5 years worth of funding out of basically ARPA, including what we already have. That 5 year, it's not forever, but it's much less surge-like than the ERA funding round of 07, 08, whatever. Maybe it was 8, 9. I'm not sure exactly when the money hit the ground back then. But, and those, in terms of the total units, have you compared that trajectory that I know this is just the moderate income tranche of work, and we're talking about it more broadly. There'll be people above moderate who will just do the work. It's affordable to them and they think it's a good investment. There'll be low income people who will be receiving services to other programs. Have you put together a composite picture and seen what kind of trajectory that puts us on in terms of the 90,000 additional homes by through 2030?
This is below that trajectory. So we're talking about over the next 5-6 years, including 2021. It's roughly 9 or 10,000 homes here,
Right.
and so and that's there's a significant amount above what we would have otherwise done.
Right.
Combined with the OEO programs, which would also roughly double in number of units, it still is short of kind of a linear trajectory. But I think we need to be thinking of it as exponential. And I think of that 90,000 additional homes as a good guidepost, really, to meet there's if we're meeting our greenhouse gas reduction requirements, and we have something like, there's two points I want to make. One is that we could do slightly more homes and go less deep in each unit, or do slightly less homes and go deeper in each unit and get more savings and still get the same amount of fossil fuel and greenhouse gas reduction and to meet the targets. So 90,000 is kind of this guidepost, but not necessarily dispositive in my mind, because there's some play there, I guess.
Sure.
The other thing I just want to point out is that if something like the clean heat standard passes, then that really sets a pace for weatherization, sets a pace for reductions in the thermal sector. And you could get those reductions from weatherization, or you could get them from other methods and still meet the targets. I think we've pointed out previously. Last year we did with ACCD a brief economic impact study of weatherization, finding huge benefits to the general economy, and weatherization, especially low income, also low to moderate income, is a real really can attack energy burden and be a good. It hits the marks in terms of equity and providing benefits to those most in need. And so there's all kinds of good reasons to do weatherization as part of that clean heat standard process. But if the primary goal is emissions, then the clean heat standard kind of can control. But it also, with this funding here, the current draft of the bill and the clean heat standard has the ability to bank some credits, and some of this weatherization could really go to make the clean heat standard really equitable and lower the cost of those credits. So we have a good glide path and trajectory into the clean heat standard that doesn't actually cost ratepayers in terms of fuel bills. It doesn't cost customers a whole lot of money as we start to implement a clean heat standard.
Okay. So as you refer to the clean heat standard, so one, I can imagine that helping drive weatherization, because it becomes an allowable offset to fossil fuels. So that could be income into the program or weatherization generally. But how about when we are already subsidizing, weatherization work as seen in your chart here? Does the weatherization achieved by the program we're looking at right here flow through as an eligible credit to the clean heat standard? I haven't heard anyone really talk about that. I don't know if it makes any sense that it would, because the work is provided for by another program. It would seem like we would have to be careful not to get into double accounting or something.
Right. So I think it would count under the current version of the bill, and that I think you can not worry about the double counting portion, because though these credits would need to be how they're provided, I think, is up in the air. Do providers need to purchase these credits, or are they kind of a first tranche that is, purchased at a lower cost or provided for free? Those kinds of questions are up in the air. But really, the clean heat standard, the current version, it's designed with obligations to actually hit our greenhouse gas reduction requirements. And so if we're doing this now to reduce our fuel needs, then that's all the better to meet our clean heat standard and lower our thermal fuel usage. It's kind of like I equate it a little bit to tier 2 of the renewable energy standard. That sets the pace for in-state renewable development, and it could come from net metering, or it could come from utility projects, but really just the pace is set by tier 2, and it matters less exactly where it comes from as long as you're getting it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, to the degree that by 26 a clean heat standard could conceivably be a maturing, fully functional program, it might drive the value of those RECs that would then could address that $14 million cliff conceivably as well.
Yeah, I think it could be helpful, and it a lot depends on the ultimate design of the program.
Right.
Once this ARPA money is no longer, weatherization could be an expensive way to get credits, and in that case, the market actors would go to the least expensive option. Right. And so it depends. It's not guaranteed to be a funding source unless it's directed to be.
Right. Well, and it seems my recollection is if you're trying to reduce greenhouse gases, that weatherization, although beneficial, is not the most cost-effective way to get those greenhouse gas reductions. You had a chart that you brought in last year. It was sort of a McKinsey-like chart with how much does it cost to reduce greenhouse gases, and I think I'm trying to remember the chart, but there were some that were stunningly more cost-effective than others. And I think maybe at the other end of the scale was electrical buses or something like that.
Yeah, weatherization was close to $0, so it was cost-effective for sure. $0 per ton of carbon based on the net cost to Vermont as a whole. Right. And you're right, electric buses and net metering were an expensive way to reduce carbon. I think electric efficiency and trying to think of the other one. There was another resource. It may have been heat pumps were a lower cost.
Yep. Okay. All right. So before the chart comes down, anyone have questions for Mr. Poor relative to the chart? All right. So let's pull it down, please. Thank you. That'll be easier to see each other. Great. And so for the anticipated support going forward, the 80 million, you just laid out a pathway for the 35, and that is, sorry, I mislabeled my chart. So the 45 that remains, is that through Office of Economic Opportunity? Is that where, so basically it'd be the low income weatherization component of the 80?
That's right.
Okay. All right. Any committee questions for Mr. Poor? All right. Well, it's also helpful to have you reminding us about last year's appropriation that included $2 million for workforce. In what's being proposed in the 80 is, so that's, are you anticipating that any of that may also be split up as we did last year, and there may be a tranche of it that goes to supporting, for instance, higher incentives through VEIC or EVT and the other energy efficiency utilities, as well as another slice that would continue to support workforce? Or do you get into that level of detail?
So we didn't in the proposal. The proposal was for the full 35 million to go towards weatherization projects.
Okay.
In terms of incentives, we did build in those kind of estimate of total units a pretty significant increase in cost for the average project.
Okay.
And so that in turn speaks to the potential for not even just inflationary effects, but the potential to have higher wages, which then leads to encouraging the workforce, but not specifically carved out like that, like the last year's appropriation. This year is proposed to be 35 million directly for the programs.
Okay. So on solar, we saw hard costs come down like 90% over a decade. Do you, in the world of switching to cleaner sources of heat, are we seeing anything like that, or is it mostly that the price is staying the same, but the performance is going up, kind of like computers or something?
I think it's the price is of the technology itself, like for a heat pump is largely staying the same. The installation cost is going up, and the for weatherization, I think we're just seeing costs go up. It's pretty labor intensive. It's and construction supplies, as I'm sure you've all heard, have been hard to come by without paying a premium. And so costs are going in the other direction. That's something like solar panels, which are getting more and more efficient in collecting energy.
Yep.
So
okay. And how about this is a pure heat pump question. It seems as though the temperature at which they're functional has dropped year by year. I don't know if that's trend is still going or they're sort of maxed out.
That's a good question. I haven't seen any data recently on that. I do know, as you get to -5 and -15 degrees, that the efficiency still does go down, and particularly in those far below zero temperatures. I haven't seen an updated efficiency curve though in a little while.
Okay. All right. Well, great. So thanks for the tune-up on weatherization spending. We'll have Ms. Buxton and Commissioner Walk in when folks are back from wherever. So we'll reschedule.
Thanks, TJ.
With that, we have finished the weatherization bill for the morning, and I'd like to spend a little committee time before we'll end up adjourning early, but I'd like to spend a little committee time talking about a couple other questions related to the Act 250 bill. So before we say goodbye to Mr. Poor, anything else for him? All right. So thanks again for coming in.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye. So I just wanted to, we talked about it briefly at the beginning of the morning, and I wanted to loop back to it and try to be as crystal clear as I can about what I'm thinking. I will be asking Ms. Schakowsky to put together for our next draft. We have a bill that I think, as best I know, all the contents were pretty well settled, but for the housing and ARPA funding provisions. And then I would say, based on what we learned yesterday, there's a concern that creating a whole new type of purely ARPA funded housing or something like that doesn't really work, doesn't really happen in the real housing world. And we're outdriving our headlamps on that one. So what I was going to ask the committee about is the notion of when a priority housing project is primarily funded by ARPA dollars. What if we set a higher performance standard in terms of affordability there? Because then it's just sort of another flavor of PHP. And since we would be responding to the legitimate, I don't know if it's complaint, but observation that we're not really bringing much to the table ordinarily for PHPs. We're waiving some fees that are only totaling $35,000, which is not, it's real money, but it's not that much when it's a multi-million-dollar project. So what do people think of that concept?
Why would you be limiting it to ARPA dollars as opposed to, taxpayer dollars or government funding?
It's a fair question. I was actually, I was trying to, because the PHP deal was struck in 2017. Yeah, I would like to make improvements on that, but I don't suspect that we're going to reverse course there without having something to put on the table. And that's where I thought, well, the ARPA money is the new component. And so maybe that's the legitimate request. Lower ARPA dollars are supposed to help those who are most affected by COVID. That's certainly true of lower income Vermonters. Let's ask for a larger ARPA benefit when it comes to housing in PHPs. So that was the best I could come up with between waking up at 2 a.m, 4 a.m, and 6 a.m, thinking about this.
Okay,
just
sorry.
being picky when we say reverse course. What direction are we going in? So when we talk about reversing course, we know which direction we seek to go in.
I mean, they would be, the covenants for longevity would be longer. So, maybe that means 15 years becomes 30 again, right? Like we go back to where we started. And we could say instead of 80-20, a different percentage of the mix in the project would. So I think, it's not our bailiwick. I feel like if we put a proposal out there that adjusts those things, others can respond to that. And it could become tuned. I don't think we're not going to get to a perfect answer, but we can have a proposal that's certainly more progressive, is what I'm thinking. Senator Campion?
So, yeah, I no doubt you were having regular conversations with Senator Sorokin since PHPs are in his bill, correct?
Yeah, I think, yes. Well, yes.
So they're in his bill. We have them in ours. This is moving in a similar direction to what our friends down the hall are also proposing.
Yes, I think, the kinds of revisions we did throughout the first section of the bill related to water, to density, to permits, all that stuff, I think they are going to use the exact same language in their bill.
Okay.
Senator Westman.
Are they going to put this language in their bill?
Well, that's
I've been wondering about which vehicle is which and how this was going to fit together.
Yeah.
It seems kind of funny for us to, if they're going to put it in our, a bill for us to put this out, you know,
Right. That's a great point.
Right. So one way to do that, and that's the point of the meeting that we couldn't get organized yesterday, but will be happening today, end of day. It could be we would vote this bill out and have it referred with the report of the committee, Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy intact and refer it to them. So it's like a baton pass. They would have our language there for possible inclusion in their bill. I've asked council about it more than once, and she's mentioned it to us. I've asked that the end of day meeting include Ms. Chakowski. There's a question of germaneness. They're doing a housing bill, and I'm not sure that that the road rule would pass a germaneness test, or the wood products manufacturing provisions would pass a germaneness test for a housing bill. Just like if we're sticking strictly to Act 250, someone could say, well, why do you have any housing provisions in your bill? And I would say, well, I think there is a very intimate connection between Act 250 and the housing stuff we're talking about. But we are a little bit both committees are straddling a fence a little bit, and that's the awkwardness I see right now. So I'll meet with Senator Sirotkin and others, including the pro tem, and we'll figure out a best way to bring this forward. And I don't know if people have any more comments, suggestions, etc.
Well, let Mark go.
Senator McDonald.
The Senator Bray and I serve on finance. We're trying to narrow the subject, and here I am guilty again of making it wider. Yesterday I had a long discussion about veterans and veterans income taxation, and one of the estimates that we got were, if we were to go whole hog on exempting veterans pensions, that we'd be fortunate enough to have 640 veterans to move to the state of Vermont. And we're trying to deal with workforce housing and make it work better at the same time that we're, I'm not saying we're going to take the veterans suggestion but we are putting a pressure on, we're being asked to put even more pressure on the shortage of housing, affordable housing in Vermont. At the same time, we're being asked to solve the problem of affordable housing here in Vermont. And we as a legislature, and perhaps in this share with the administration, the dilemma of exacerbating the very thing that we say is our priority to resolve. And I think right now we're poised to get out of this particular legislative session with a greater housing shortfall for low income people and some of the middle, missing middle, than we started with. Just going with the proposals that are on the table. And I just find that worrisome, and don't know how we convince ourselves and our colleagues that this is a bigger picture and it's not going to be solved piecemeal. So I think what the chair is proposing to try and include some of these requirements for this ARPA money and other monies is flat out essential if we're going to authorize the expenditure of any of that. Otherwise, we just fall behind at an even more rapid clip. So,
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, please.
Um, and to be quite frank, this is the part of this whole discussion in the whole Act 250 that I like the best. The rest of the bill I can live without, but this is the part that I like the best. And what I'd say was I was extremely disappointed yesterday when you talk about median income in Vermont's probably in the 60 to 65,000 range. So when you're talking about at 120%, we're going to cut off about 80,000, and that missing middle that is the 80 to something in the low 100s range. I don't know how they get in a house, with the competition that's out there. And yesterday's testimony, it sounded like there's no way to help them.
Right.
With any of this money. And I'm sitting there going, the people that are just trying, and I'm afraid, Mark, that the military retired people that you're talking about are probably going to be in households right around 100, a lot of them. And I don't know, I was just extremely frustrated because it sounds like very little chance to do anything for that group. And I'm just expressing my frustration to them.
Yeah. Senator. Yeah, I agree. Senator Campion.
Yeah, I agree as well. And this is why I think these dialogues with Senate Economic Development are so important, since they're looking at these numbers. This is more their angle than ours in a way, and we can talk about it left and right, but they need to look to us around the environmental pieces. But really, it's the work that should be happening down the hall. So I'll be eager to hear how this evening's meeting goes.
Yeah.
But I share this deep concern that everybody on the committee does as well. Is I don't know how, middle income, new couples, single people are able to even touch this market.
Right. I mean, we have 40 plus years of income disparity growing. And then we have.
But again, I would say, sorry to interrupt, but we can talk about the money pieces. Yeah. It's got to happen down there. We all share it. They need to sort of come to us and say, in order to get this done, this is what we need you guys to do.
Right. Senator McCormick.
Thanks. I do want to point out that this problem is not specific to Vermont. It's all over the country. And that means there are 49 states that don't have Act 250, and they're having the same problem. I don't agree that Act 250 is the problem. And I don't agree that if we just don't get so quite obsessed with protecting the environment, all that silliness, that all will be well. I think the problem here actually is market forces. And that's not to say that I'm against market forces. Sometimes market forces are not benign. Sometimes the market takes us to places we don't want to go. And I think that's where we are here. I don't know what we can do about it. It's generally the kind of the liberal fixes are a lot of bells and whistles that just kind of get things more complicated and provide only partial relief from a problem. But I think there's probably something along those lines are the best we can do. As I say, liberal bells and whistles, various subsidies and grants and loans and so on. But I think it is not only bad for the environment for us to be using this as an occasion to weaken Act 250. I think that's bad for the environment, but it's also bad for the effort to take care of the housing problem because it's spending time and energy and attention on something that is actually not the problem. The scene with the minister in Blazing Saddles comes to mind.
I respect Senator McCormick's position. I too agree that it's a number of things coming together right now, and a lot of us are also just sharing, and I will too, the anecdotal things that we're hearing or experiencing. And there was something recently in our local paper where a couple moved to Tennessee, 1,200 square foot house, $183,000. Now, I suspect the salaries that they're making are kind of matching what New England salaries are as well. And again, it's just one experience, but I just don't know many of those houses that are on the market in this area. But I agree with, for that price, but I do agree with Senator McCormick. It's a complicated number of factors that are coming together right now.
Sure. The data we've received from NRB and the analysis on it, to his point, doesn't really, as best I can see, looking at it more than once, does not bear out the notion that Act 250 is slowing projects down to some sort of significant degree. And we did hear that it to not be an Act 250 could save you $35,000 in permit fees, but it's not an insignificant sum. But as Senator McDonald pointed out, if you're building 20 units and it's even over just 15 years, it's 35,000 divided by 20 divided by 15 years of rent payments. It's a very modest impact on the monthly rent of those units, even at the shortest longevity covenant. So I'm not sure I always understand the aversion to the cost of participation. Senator McDonald.
We're the Vermont legislature and focusing on what were our issues here. And when we look at the rest of the country, we find that by and large, people are leaving rural areas and going to cities. What is unique about Vermont right now in the last couple of years is that people are leaving those other states to come here and live in the countryside. And they're building in the countryside, but they are buying in the countryside. We just got named in some poll of about 2.5 weeks ago of the 10 best counties in the United States to move to deal with global warming issues and to deal with life and Vermont had 7 of the counties. That's what we're dealing with, people coming here who buying our housing stock, and they buy it because they think it's a bargain. They hire our labor forces and our contractors to build dwellings for them because they think it's a bargain. And those bargains are, as Senator Westman said, putting our local citizens at the end of the line. We had witnesses yesterday tell us that the problem is the state government needs to put more money towards affordable housing. If we're going to put more money towards it, it ought to be towards the people that are coming up short. And if we're told, for the last 6 years, every time anybody suggests anything, it's the first part of the sentence is, in this time of limited resources. We've got people coming here with money to buy the houses they want and to build the houses they want built. And the losers are the people who live here and compete for that housing. We should be asking that group of people who we are welcoming here to pick up some of the tab for it. That's a longer range challenge than what we have this year. But we sure as heck this year should be spending the money we have on the people here in Vermont that are being squeezed out. So it's a long speech.
Well,
We're not gonna compete with Tennessee. Tennessee's gonna get the people it gets. We have a problem here that we need to deal with.
as you were speaking, Senator McDonald, I wrote down PTT receipts, question mark. I mean, that may be, Senator Westman, have you in any of your appropriations meetings or joint fiscal or any of that kind of stuff heard about where our revenues are on the property transfer tax? And if there's a windfall there that might be directed to support the kind of housing we're talking about?
It's,
No, I haven't, we haven't, that we haven't gone into that in detail yet.
that's simply slicing up the existing pie differently. We're not gonna solve our revenues by taking our own revenues and reallocating them. That's what we do. That's what we've been doing, and we fall behind.
Right. Well, you're right. I suppose if you had a more progressive property transfer tax, then it might get at some of this support. Anyway, I was just thinking if prices have gone up and the PTT has had a bump in it, that maybe there's, I would agree. If the pie stayed the same size, I wouldn't want to just be slicing it thinner. If the pie got bigger, maybe there's a new slice around. That's what I'm wondering. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone for any more committee comments, questions on the Act 250 stuff. All
Thanks
right.
for this forum.
Well,
Thanks for this forum.
yeah, we're the other day we were wrestling with a porcupine. I'm not sure what we're wrestling with today. Something different than a porcupine, an eel, maybe. It's very hard to get hold of. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. If you have more thoughts on any of this, obviously it's a work in progress, and I will stay in touch with people. And tomorrow I'll report out on the meeting. I don't know if Senator McDonald, I haven't seen anything yet. You came to the last one. Maybe you'll be there tonight or this afternoon, whenever that is. So anyway, be happy to share whatever I learn. If you have questions you want me to carry to that meeting, please let me know.